Chapter 10. Moving to CSP Corcoran Security Housing Unit SHU as a documented gang member was like going to college in a war zone. Grattan was placed with the most incorrigible inmates and subjected to an integration yard policy that forced inmates of different ethnic and geographic backgrounds, often in rival gangs, to exercise together on tiny recreation yards the size of half of a basketball court. Numerous fights between black, white, and Latino gang members resulted from this controversial practice. Fights were an everyday occurrence and led to dozens of shootings. Guards fired gas guns and carbine rifles to break them up, sometimes hitting and killing the wrong inmates. Grattan was first celled with Vicente Palucas Altamoreno, a longtime well-known NF member and convicted murderer from Oakland, who had already served over 20 straight years before Grattan ever set foot in his cell. He was quickly introduced to the ways of the Nuestra Familia, and within a few days, he received a warm SHU welcome when he was issued another CDC 115 incident rules violation report and placed on CTQ because a piece of metal that Altamoreno had hidden in their cell as a potential weapon was discovered by a guard during a routine search. Upon the adjudication of this first CDC 115, Altamoreno began schooling Grattan by explaining the importance of weapon stock. He told him that although a weapon can protect, it also needs protection. From that point on, Altamoreno took a liking to Grattan. He realized that Grattan was a fast learner, a solid NR member, and that he had leadership potential. He placed him in charge of the Norteños in their section. Without knowing any better, Grattan was waltzed into the gangster lifestyle by professionals. A couple of weeks later, Altamoreno was transferred to another prison and Grattan was celled with Robert Joker Juarez, one of Grattan's old crew members from Daly City, who had also been involved in the North-South confrontation that took place on May 4th, 1989 in the CSP Corcoran C facility gymnasium. Juarez informed Grattan that all NR members were ordered to attack any and all enemy elements on the recreation yards. Within a week, Grattan was issued a CDC 115 incident rules violation report, which read, on September 25th, 1989, at approximately 13:11 hours, while performing my duties as yard gun officer in 4A3 right, I observed inmates Juarez E07285, cell 4A3 right 041, Grattan E12048, 4A3 right 04, and Medina D73770, 4A3 right 05, in a physical altercation fist fight on 4A3 right yards number 1. Inmate Juarez distracted inmate Medina. Inmate Medina turned his head toward inmate Grattan as he rushed him with clenched fists, striking inmate Medina in the head. I ordered the combatants to stop and assume a prone position on the yard, but they continued to fight, which necessitated the discharge of one number 264 multiple baton round from the 37mm gas gun, serial number G44605, to quell the disturbance. All inmates then assumed a prone position as verbally ordered. The yard was recalled without further incident. Inmates Medina and Grattan were examined by the on-duty medical staff and returned to their cells. The 5 expended wooden baton blocks were retrieved and the yard was searched for contraband with negative results. Inmate Grattan has been made aware of this report. Signed, C.O.O. Ontario. Grattan spent the next couple of months celled with Juarez. His NR schooling, however, was now under the watchful eyes of the Criminal Activity Coordinator, CAC, who immediately issued a CAC chrono which read, Criminal Activity Coordinator Chrono. On May 25th, 1989, Subject C file was reviewed for the purpose of investigating possible gang affiliation. At this point, there is insufficient documentation to associate subject with any prison gang. However, confidential information regarding Northern structure is noted, and subject will be closely monitored in the future regarding gang activity. Signed, R.D. Van Zant, Lieutenant, CAC. By this time, Grattan was learning the necessities of being a prison gang member. After Juarez was moved to another section, Grattan quickly learned the importance of concealing internal communications with his fellow gang members when he received a CDC 115 for unauthorized correspondence between inmates, which read, CDC 115 Incident Rules Violation Report. On February 2nd, 1990, at approximately 1900 hours, while performing my duties as 4A3 left floor officer number 1, I was screening the mail. I noticed that inmate Grattan, E12048, 4A3 right, 53 right, was attempting to correspond with inmates Villanueva, E08103, 4A3 left, 30 right, and inmate Juarez, E07825. All three inmates are housed in separate buildings and did not have prior approval from the warden to correspond with each other. The correspondence was attempted by sending mail to an address in Modesto, California, and having the mail rerouted back to this institution. Inmate Grattan is aware of this report. Signed, C.O. Carroll. Grattan was now being schooled by Donald Wino Perez, an NF member from San Jose. His schooling was intensified, and it was now time to test his loyalty to find out if he was willing to use a weapon to spill enemy blood. The CDC 115 Incident Rules Violation Report read, on Sunday, February 18th, 1990, at approximately 14:36 hours, Correctional Officer R. Alsop observed inmate Grattan, E12048, swing his right hand, striking inmate Johnson, D38142, in the lower back on the shoe exercise yard 2. Inmate Grattan refused to comply with Officer Alsop's verbal commands to stop his assault, which necessitated the discharge of one .264 multiple baton round from the assigned federal laboratory gas gun. It was determined after the incident that inmate Johnson had sustained a superficial puncture wound to his lower right back and 2 scratches on his left back. The puncture wound was initially thought to have been a small scratch until a weapon was discovered on the yard. Inmate Johnson was re-examined and determined to have received a puncture-type wound. Also examined and treated was inmate Costa for a laceration to his right hand finger, which he sustained from the multiple baton round reflecting off the ground. Inmate Grattan received no injuries as a result of this incident. Officer R. Alsap maintained possession of the instrument measuring 4 1/4 inches long and 3/4 inches wide, sharpened to a point at one end until it was marked with his initials, tagged, photographed, and secured in Evidence Locker 8 to be processed in accordance with institutional policies and procedures. Inmate Grattan was advised of his constitutional rights pursuant to the Miranda direction by Correctional Sergeant P.R. Sanchez relative to being suspected of a stabbing assault on inmate Johnson. Inmate Grattan acknowledged understanding his rights and chose to remain silent. With his attack with a weapon on Johnson, Grattan proved his willingness to spill enemy blood, but he was charged with a felony and given a district attorney referral to determine if the courts would prosecute this new charge. He was transferred to a far more restricted housing unit, also known as Bedrock, where inmates are single-celled and allowed limited privileges. He was housed next to and introduced to Fidel Boxer de la Riva from Selma, an NF member who took Grattan's prison gang education one step further. De la Riva sponsored Grattan's membership into NF and had him placed on a 6-month probation to further his NF schooling. Grattan was given a copy of the NF's Revised Objectives and Bylaws, which read, Revised Objective and Bylaws, Article 1, Section 1. The primary purpose and goals of this organization is for the betterment of its members and the building up of this O into a strong and self-supporting organization. 2. All members will work solely for this purpose, putting all personal feelings and goals aside until said fulfillment is accomplished. 3. A member shall remain a member unless otherwise discharged. He will always be subject to put the O's best interest first and always above everything else. 4. A member will honor his commitment in fulfilling his responsibilities in establishing O territories and work in hand with other members. 5. Expulsion is automatic for any member who turns coward, traitor, or deserter. Expulsion is the revoking of membership, respect, and all benefits of this organization. 6. In order to invoke Section 5, Article 1, the regimental governing body will hold a vote amongst themselves. Majority rules. In the case of a tie vote, the decision will lie with a representative from the OGB. His decision shall be final. 2. Any individual seeking membership can be denied or excluded for misrepresentation of his qualifications or intentions. 3. The OGB has the power to impose limitations or authorize exceptions regarding recruitment. Article 3, Section 1. All members are subject to disciplinary action or expulsion for his misconduct or behavior unbecoming of a member. Said conditions shall prevail with regards to the member, his superiors, or the O as a whole. The OGB will govern and oversee all O policies and procedures. Any and all decisions made by the OGB shall be final. 3. The RSD will pass all sentencing and see to the administering of punishment for all minor infractions of conduct. 4. A member will not disrespect a fellow member or his superiors, be that in actions or words. 5. At no time shall there be any fighting amongst members. To do so will result in the expulsion of one or both parties involved. 6. A member will not lie or give false impressions when discussing O business with another member or his superiors. 7. No member shall put material things before a fellow member or this O, including money, women, or drugs. 8. It is the sacred duty of a member to honor his commitment to this organization, and no member shall feel entitled to any special privileges because of his rank or actions. All that should matter is that you are living up to your responsibilities as a member. Remember, a true Familiano does not need to brag or boast about his accomplishments. 9. Under no circumstance shall a member mislead another member, nor misinterpret this Constitution for personal gain. Nor are there to be any alterations without notification of at least 2/3 decision from the OGB. After receiving NS objectives and bylaws, Grattan quickly started studying NS primary purpose and goals, as well as its requirements and his responsibilities. A couple of weeks later, Grattan was seen by the UCC for a special housing review. Within a month of being placed in the restricted housing unit, Grattan became an obligated NF member. With his new obligations, he immediately got into yet another physical altercation on the recreation yard. This time, Grattan attacked Richard Big Rich Hagler from Southern California, an Aryan Brotherhood AB member. Later that same day, the King County District Attorney filed a declaration for release and transportation of a prisoner order. Grattan was rehoused in a regular SHU that didn't contain any NF enemies. He attempted to avoid any additional CDC 115s while he was going back and forth to court. A couple of months later, however, Grattan returned to ICC and received another chrono which read, on 8/8/1990, Grattan appeared before 4A SHU ICC this date for the purpose of special review. Committee note subject was initially placed in ADSEG on 5/4/89 at CSP Corcoran for participation in a North-South Mexican confrontation for which subject was initially placed on indeterminate status. Committee note subject is still pending action for RVR dated 2/1890. Log number 290-4AZ10. Based upon charges, committee acts to refer this case to the CSR with recommendation of retention in SHU on indeterminate SHU status pending results of DA action and further evaluation. Subject understands that he will be retained in SHU on indeterminate status pending results of DA action and further evaluation and disposition of CDC 115 dated 2/18/1990. His next review will be on 11/7/90 for indeterminate review. His credit earning status is currently D1D, signed T. Pruitt, PA, D. Offendahl, CC2, and M. Ledbetter. The following month, via a plea bargain, Grattan pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of possession of a weapon rather than an actual stabbing assault. The court then sentenced him to 8 months in the California State Prison to be served consecutive to the term he was already serving. Once Grattan pled guilty in court to possession of a weapon charge, he was automatically found guilty of the stabbing assault on inmate Johnson within the prison system by a CSP Corking disciplinary officer and assessed an additional 360 days loss of credit. Nevertheless, since it took several months to reach a conclusion within the courts, Grattan managed to stay disciplinary free long enough to submit a few credit restoration applications. 2 weeks later, Grattan was retained in SHU on indeterminate SHU status. After Grattan was placed on indeterminate SHU status, he knew he'd more than likely be spending the remainder of his 4-year and 8-month prison sentence in a high SHU. Although fights continued on a regular basis, he was moving up the NF ranks and able to avoid any additional fistfights. However, he did remain under the CAC spotlight and was continuously monitored. This chronicle read, on 5/9/91, I received a phone call from the Fresno County Jail Deputy Jay Gary, who stated that the above inmate had written one of their inmates who is presently incarcerated in their jail. The inmate receiving the mail is Oscar Mendez, D03711, aka Ticker, an identified Northern Structure member. Grattan's from Modesto. It appears that subject is keeping in contact with known gang members, and his behavior should be monitored and documented whenever gang association or activity is present. If and when additional information becomes available, subject's gang status will be reevaluated. A copy of the letter has been placed in miscellaneous section of C-File. Signed, R. Asuncion, Lieutenant CAC. With this new CAC information, Grattan was moved to another SHU. After filing a report with the NF's overall authority in charge of that unit, Grattan quickly learned that there was, in fact, a lot of foul play going on within the NF and that he couldn't just trust anyone who claimed to be an active member. After filing said report, Grattan later received another CAC chrono which read, on 5/14/91, during a tour of the housing unit where subject is housed, the housing staff informed this writer of 3 notes that were retrieved from the tier, and they believed them to be written by the above named inmate. This writer believes this to be true in that the writer introduces himself as Huerito from Modesto. The contents of the 3 notes reflect that he represents the NR, Nuestra, which is the old term. The new term for the NR is NS, Northern Structure, which is a prison gang spawned from the Nuestra Familia, NF. Subject informs the receiver of the notes, unknown, that he was sponsored by Manuel Gonzalez, C50414, aka Leon de Modesto, an identified NF associate. Further on the notes, subject gives a brief history of himself and identifies numerous other identified NF and NS associates and members. It appears that subject is informing the security or squad leader who subject is and what he has done or accomplished. Subject further uses terminology known to be used by NS NF members. For example, C means carnal, NF member or familiano. This information is based upon intelligence gathering from defectors of the NS-NF. Subject's behavior should be monitored and documented whenever gang association or activity is present. If and when additional information becomes available, Subject's gang status will be reevaluated. A copy of the 3 notes will be placed in the miscellaneous section of C file. Signed R. Asuncion Lieutenant, CAC. A few days later, Grattan was validated as a Northern Structure Associate. This CAC chrono read: Gang Identification Validation Chrono. On 5/16/91, a gang validation package subject was received from gang investigator Asuncion at CSP Corcoran. The documents submitted as validation of subject's gang affiliation were sufficient to meet departmental validation requirements. Accordingly, subject has been validated as a Northern Structure Associate. Signed A.B. Anderson, SSU. On 7/2/91, Grattan was endorsed for transfer to Pelican Bay State Prison, PBSP, Security Housing Unit, SHU, for an indeterminate term based on his disruptive behavior and association with the Northern Structure Prison Gang.